yeah, and try to be quiet outside even because my microphone has to be pretty sensitive right now. All right. Very noisy in this house today. There are children, which is great, obviously, but they're having fun, but it's a little distracting. Also, I was gonna say, oh yeah, somebody's mowing or doing some yard work, so that's kind of noisy too. All right, so checking the volume levels on my microphone. They look okay, so I hope that's coming through all right. I'm also gonna see. Let me pull up Slack. Several windows here. Let me see what I'm doing. I'm gonna switch to the other way of looking at my stream information, so I can keep an eye on that. And kind of rearrange my desk here. So, good morning, everyone. Looks like I have some viewers. Good morning. Good morning. Okay, good morning. Hello. So, yeah, got some viewers. Good morning. So today, if you're on the stream here, we're going to be talking about text analysis. I'm going to be giving you an introduction to the text analysis module. If you recall from Monday, I introduced all of them very quickly, and so my plan for the next several streams is to introduce each one of them in more detail. So today I'm going to be giving you some more detailed, introduction to the text analysis module, and this will be a bit interactive. I'm going to ask for your input in a moment and then work with your input. So, yeah, good morning. So this is, we only have like 3 weeks left in the class, I guess. So this is 12, 13, well, 3 or 4 weeks depending on how you count. So this will be kind of your last set of projects to work on and then your final thing. So there's not that much left. That said, make sure you don't get too far behind. I mean, I'm not too worried about due dates per se, but don't forget to complete the archaeology project soon so you can move on to this methodology project. The archaeology project, I think, had 17 submissions last I checked, so, and there should be 50 something. So those of you who are still turning it in, you're not late because due dates don't matter anymore, but I am a little worried about you falling behind and not being able to do it as well at the end. But that's just advice. I'm not going to penalize you for getting it in late. Oh yeah, you may have seen when I shared on Twitch, yesterday, just out of curiosity and for fun, I was streaming myself playing Super Hexagon. So the stream name, as you see it in Slack, says that still that I'm streaming Super Hexagon, but I'm not at the moment streaming Super Hexagon. Again, if you want, it's a really fun game. It's an abstract. I don't know what you call it. I guess an action game, but it's not really action. It's very, very challenging, but I like it a lot. It's a lot of fun it's fun to try to rise to the challenge, so to speak. So the other thing, I guess, I imagine a lot of you that are here right now were also here on Monday, so I don't want to go through it all again necessarily, but there are some new grading options available this semester, the flexible grading options to accommodate and recognize how things have changed this semester and how difficult things are for everyone. So the main thing that the main advice I would give you is just wait, I guess, to decide which option to switch into. But the flexible option definitely seems better than pass-fail. So in terms of which options you have, if you stick with the letter grade, that's my default recommendation for this class because I do plan on giving a lot of A's, to be honest. But if you feel like you'd rather switch to something else, then I would definitely recommend the flexible option as opposed to pass-fail. And probably the same for all your other classes. Like if you get to that last week of class and you feel like you're just not going to get a grade you want, or you just would rather not worry about it, and you want to switch to something else, the flexible option is better than the pass-fail option, I think, because the pass-fail option still has the risk of an F, and that would affect your GPA. but the flexible option, you could either get credit or P19 credit, or no credit. And in all of those cases, P19 will still meet several requirements, and no credit won't hurt your GPA. So there are some nuances that are still being determined about that, but I think overall it's going to be a good option as a fallback from a letter grade if you don't think a letter grade is going to work. So keep that in mind for that reason. So my son does this thing where he screams like that, and he's having fun, but it's really annoying. I'm gonna go tell him to knock it off for a second. Hang on. Hey, stop it! It's distracting my video. Stop screaming. Daniel, I'm talking to you. Stop screaming. Okay. All right, I'm back. Yeah, that was him. I mean, he's just, I don't know if you heard it on the microphone, but it's definitely annoying. You know, I definitely heard it. He does this thing and he screams. He's having fun, but it sounds like he's broken a leg or something, and it's just like if he actually does get hurt, I don't immediately respond, maybe because he's always screaming like that. I don't know. Anyway, so I'm going to spend the rest of this video taking you through text analysis and showing you some things you can do with that, and also inviting you to participate in a basic kind of inquiry that we can do with text analysis. So this, you should be able to see my browser here on the left. I've been playing with looks like my picture is a little bigger than it used to be. I'm not sure why, but that'll work. So this is not what I was intending to show you. I wanted to take you through an activity with Voyant tools, and you know, Voyant tools is fun. It's interesting because it presents lots of different ways of interacting with a text. A corpus is what it calls it. A corpus is just a generic word for text because text might mean specific things to certain people, but a corpus is just a bag of words, and you can do different things with it in Voyant tools, and really pretty sophisticated things. The trick with Voyant tools is understanding what these different things are doing and then developing an argument around that understanding. That's the really challenging and tricky part of it. So let me give you well, let's try basically an experiment. Okay, so what you're looking at right here, this is a text corpus I've been playing around with that is about 21 different literary works by G.K. Chesterton, and I'm kind of interested in Chesterton, but I'm also I wanted a corpus to play with, and so I've assembled a bunch of files of Chesterton. So that's what you're looking at here. But to try something a bit more specific, I'd like to do this. I'll put a question here in Slack. So let's try something to experiment with text analysis in Voyant. So off the top of your head, think of a novel. Ideally from the 19th century or early 20th century. So let's get a list. So let's get a list of novels. And so I'm giving you that range of ideally 19th century, early 20th century because those will be easier to find. In order to do text analysis, we're going to need to find the full plain text of these novels. So just name one off the top of your head and we'll see if we can find it. And we'll get a list, and then we'll try to organize them. Okay, great. Dorian Gray. So I'm going to write these down so we can try them out. Thanks, Jessica. Dorian Gray. Little Women. Excellent. Okay. Those both should be fine. Gatsby may not work. We'll look anyway. Gatsby might be too new. In other words, it's still under copyright, and so it might be harder to find that one than you. Pride and Prejudice, of course, classic. To Pride and Prejudice. Moby Dick, there you go. When I've done this before, whenever I ask people to just name a novel off the top of their head, Moby Dick and Pride and Prejudice always show up. So that's great. Yeah, Emma. Okay. Of course, yeah, Dracula. That's a good Of course, Jane Austen is also, if you like name a novelist off the top of your head, Jane Austen comes up a lot. So Jane Eyre and Sense and Sensibility. So even more. Um, uh, okay, so let me. Okay, we have to, have to stop at some point here. So let's. This is a pretty good list. I'll let the last couple, Lillian and Tess, put yours in here, and then let's. Added a bug to that. Monte Cristo, good. Okay. Cristo and I'll let Lillian type hers. So. This is like easier to do on a whiteboard, of course, but this will be fine. Okay, well we can have two votes for that. Okay, so let me take this list. I should have been doing this in a text document to begin with, so I can organize this a little bit more. Too many windows. So we've got, yeah, and like definitely if you support each other's, then go ahead and put it in there with the reactions. Little Women, Great Gatsby, Pride and Prejudice, Moby Dick, Dracula, Count of Monte Cristo, Treasure Island. Okay, good. Okay, so this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. This is 9 books, I guess. Did I miss one? I did. What did I miss? Jane Eyre. And Sense and Sensibility. All right, my kids, I wish they would go somewhere else. They're right there outside the window here. They're noisy. Okay, so here's the list. So here's the list. So what we need to do with this list, I'm going to give you some direction here, then I'm going to go remind my kids to be quiet again, and then I'm going to start trying to find the full text of each of these, and because I'm going to plug these all into Voyant tools. So looking at all these novels, you all know these novels either by having read it or having heard of it. What we're going to do is try to figure out the kinds of things that computers can learn about a text. So given each of these novels, what are the kinds of things that a computer could determine about these that would be very difficult or very, very time consuming for you or I to do it manually? Computers are good at counting. So what are the kinds of things that they can count? They can count all kinds of things, of course, the number of letters, the number of words, number of types of words, number of nouns, number of verbs. Understanding what to do with that counting is the real trick. But let's start with a pretty basic question here. Given these 11 novels, it's kind of a lot here. What do you think, how do you think these would compare in terms of vocabulary density? In other words, which of these authors do you think has the most diverse vocabulary or uses the most different words? Not the most total words, because that would just be however long you wrote. But given these authors, which do you think has the most diverse, most words in their vocabulary? So vocabulary density is the term for that. So see if you can even rank these in order, or maybe just the top 5. And while you're doing that, I'm going to try to get these. I'll kind of describe what I'm doing. So most of these novels should be available on Gutenberg.org. Oh, it is up again. Okay, great. So the Gutenberg.org was down earlier. So let's see if we can get these all in here. Is it gray with an E or gray with an A? There it is. So Gutenberg.org has the full text of lots of public domain works, and so that's helpful for this kind of thing. So I'm just you can't see all of my windows here, but I'm. Oh wait, no. I don't know if you can hear my kids, but it's just distracting me. I don't know. It's not the worst thing, but it's still a lot. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm downloading the plain text of these, and as you can see in the browser window here, each of these, when they come down from Project Gutenberg, they come with they include a fair amount of like preamble text explaining what this is, and then there's also a license at the end. And I don't want that because I'm going to be counting words, and I don't want to include all this license text in there as well, because that's going to throw off my count, right? So I'm not interested in the legal term, the legal vocabulary. I'm interested in Oscar Wilde's vocabulary. So there's gray.text. I got that one. Great. So what else is next? Little Women. Okay. So let me find it here. There it is. And notice when I get these, by the way, that I'm getting the plain text UTF-8. That's the best version to get, because it's not going to have extra stuff in it. If you downloaded the HTML version or the EPUB version, it's going to include extra things that you don't need, markup mainly, and that's also going to throw off the count, just like the preamble and license text. And let's see. Now, as I'm doing this, you might be wondering what sort of thing you could do with text analysis. Text analysis does not have to be done on literary works. That's just what I'm doing, because those are kind of easy to get your head around in terms of what you might want to know about something. But students have done this project before with their own writing, like their own fiction, or with or like every text message they sent to a certain person. Anything that you can think of as a big bag of words, you can feed into Voyant Schools and then learn some things about it. So Great Gatsby is not available in Project Gutenberg. There might be a way for me to find it somewhere else, but just for the sake of time, I'm going to drop that one off the list for now. The problem is that it's too new. And yes, Maddie, you could do songs by a particular artist. There are several websites that have lyrics on them, and so you could do one of those certainly. And that is a thing that students have done with this particular project. What we'll see once I get all this into Pride, and once I get it into Voyant, is that you can compare. So like if you put in multiple text, which is what I'm doing here, you can compare and contrast them. So sometimes it could be interesting to get music by two different artists and then put them both into Voyant and then compare and contrast between them. Okay, so what's next? I'm looking for Moby Dick. Great. Yeah, hopefully, like when I do this again at 11, I bet they will probably pick some of the same texts, and so I won't have to download them again. I was hoping to get a bunch of these kind of pre-downloaded, like Moby Dick and Pride and Prejudice, because they are very popular, but the website was down, or at least the search function wasn't working. Which, by the way, if you ever are wondering about a particular website, if it's up or not, or if like sometimes you're just wondering, is it your connection or is it the website itself? There's a nice service I like to use called isup.me, and if you plug in any website to that, it will tell you if the website is up or not, and sometimes that's useful. So like you can troubleshoot it. If it's something if like the website is working but you can't access it, then that means there's something wrong on your end. So you can try switching it to a different browser, or you could try resetting your router or something like that. But you will know that that's necessary if you use this website. I'll show it to you here in this browser window if I can. This is not responding quickly enough. Isup.me, and then you feed it whatever website. So if you're curious about your own website sometimes, right? You can feed it here without actually having to visit it to see if it's working. So yeah, it's up. So it says it's just you, because if I'm having a problem, that's what it's reporting. Okay, so just about got enough of these, I think. And these are all downloading very quickly, obviously. Now, if you are doing if you are interested in working on books that are newer, these are all available here for free because they are in the public domain. And so there's no copyright infringement if someone uploads them to the website, which is what Gutenberg.org has done. But if there's works that you're interested in that are newer, that are still in copyright, like Great Gatsby, it often is still possible to find a copy of it. You will be probably finding an illegal copy, but those exist, and I don't know. I'm not going to report anyone for a copyright violation. Once you find them, though, often they'll be in PDF form, and you do sometimes have to do a bit more work to get the plain text out of a PDF. It depends on how it's been encoded as a PDF, or created. So sometimes you can literally just select all of the text in a PDF, copy it, and then paste it into a text document. That would need to be a plain text editor like Notepad, or Sublime Text is the one I use. I'm using gedit here on this Linux computer. Anyway, that's usually pretty straightforward. But sometimes if you are looking at a PDF, it's actually like a scanned PDF, so it's actually pictures of each page, and so if that's the case, that's going to be much harder to work with. All right, so I just got Dracula. Let's see, maybe let's do Monte Cristo. No, I haven't been able to keep an eye on Slack. Are you all guessing which are the most, who's going to have the most dense vocabulary? Monte Cristo. So vocabulary density is kind of I mean, it's one metric among many. It's not necessarily the most meaningful, but I thought of it as a good question to ask because these are all books you probably have read in school, or that you've been assigned in an English class of some sort at some level. And so vocabulary density is kind of a proxy for difficulty in terms of complexity. So it might suggest what grade level you would read this in. There is a way to, there are several different algorithms that are commonly used to determine grade level, reading level. That's one of the things that those algorithms use is vocabulary density. They also use like average sentence length. Yeah, so test Monte Cristo is long, but I don't know how dense it is. That's something that we might be about to find out. Okay, so this is Treasure Island. So almost done here. So I know you can't see everything I'm doing here, so I'm cleaning these out. I'm just cleaning out the front and back matter. Let's do Jane Eyre. I'll do Jane Eyre next, and then since we already have other Jane Austen books, I'll just leave off Sense and Sensibility, if that's all right. So, wait, oh yeah, there it is. So, there. And hopefully Voyant Tools is working. Sometimes Voyant Tools gets overwhelmed too, if a lot of people are working on it at the same time. If that does happen, I guess that's okay. There is a fallback because Voyant has a couple of pre-built corpora you can use. So, okay, good enough. Great. All right, so I know you can only see my browser window, but I now have a bunch of text files for each of those novels, except for Great Gatsby and Sense and Sensibility. Okay, so I'm looking through your Slack now. So Moby Dick and Dracula, maybe. Okay. Sense and Sensibility. Well, we're gonna leave that one off for now. But I think Sense and Sensibility will be less dense than Pride and Prejudice because Sense and Sensibility was an earlier work, and I think Jane Austen developed her style, so I think that's probably what she did. Yeah. Okay. So so a general sense that Moby Dick might be the winner. And that Jane Austen might be like less than Moby Dick. All right, great. Okay, well, let's see what we can find out. So let me show you Voyant. So if you go to voyanttools.org and don't go, well, I mean, you can go here now, but don't, I'll give you a link to the corpus here in a moment. So what you can do is you can open an existing corpus, which they just have two preloaded, which is Shakespeare's plays and Jane Austen's novels. They're all in here as one big corpus each. When it talks about a corpus, the corpus is a body of works, and the corpus, that's literally what the written is there. I'm not going to open one there. I'm going to upload this, and then hopefully this will I will be able to send you a link to this corpus, so you can try it out yourself in the view here. So let me see if this works. So I'm uploading it here. I think this will generate a unique URL for this corpus. Like, we're feeding it into their server on Voyant, and then it's going to go through and do its thing, and then it's going to create all these different visualizations of it. Great. Okay. So I think this unique URL, so it's like voyanttools.org, and then this question mark corpus equals, and then there's this unique key. So let me give you this in Slack, and let me see if, and let me know if this works. Actually, let me know if it does work. Okay, this should be Voyant tools loaded with these works. So click that link and see if it works for you. I think it should, because it's stored on their server and then we're all just viewing it from different browsers. I think if we were to all try to upload our own versions of these corpora right now, I think that would probably overwhelm Voyant, but I think because I did it and then I'm sending you this link, I think it'll work. Try it out, let me know, or thumbs up it if it does work, whoever just did that. Thank you, Olivia. Thanks for doing that. Okay, so now that we have this in Voyant, we can start to understand it a little bit more, right? So we've got over here on the right, this is probably a good place to start, because you can see on the bottom, the x-axis of this graph, we see each of the works here. It just gives you the file names, but you can see hopefully from the file names which is which. And this kind of graph really isn't that meaningful, because we're not really interested in, like the x moving left to right doesn't really mean anything. It's not like Dorian Gray is newer or something like that. Normally you would organize if you were interested in this kind of change over time, you would organize your corpus in a way that would print them in that order. But we're just really trying to explore these texts here, and we'll get down to different things about it. Okay, so this over here on the left is a word cloud. A word cloud is a pretty conventional way of viewing a document, a kind of generated view of things. You can do other things as well, and you should be able to do this on your own if you just want to play around with it. I just wanted to explain some of these buttons here because I think they're kind of confusing. So this button here, the one that's like a square with an arrow pointing out of it, that will let you export a particular view, so you can essentially save it. And you can do it as an HTML snippet, although I find that those don't survive for very long. They will actually get shut down after a couple of weeks. They will basically recycle the data. I'm not sure why. So it's safer to export an image of it, which you can do down here if this is something you want to do. But if you click on this thing here, it's actually the Windows symbol, like the symbol for like Windows computers. I don't know why they're using it here, but you can switch different whatever is going to show up in this view up here on the top left. So you can click on that and then switch it to one of the other ones, right? I mean, a lot of these are kind of just confusing. Let's see. I don't know. Well, see, some of these are already in other windows, so that's the same one at the bottom left. Let me see what else. Cirrus is the clouds. Bubble lines. I don't even know what bubble lines is. It's just kind of this. It's showing you where these words show up. But see, like, these are such common words. Said, Mr. Man, like, no, that there's nothing really revealed to me by this. Like, that doesn't really give me much. Dreamscape is confusing. Co-locates. This might be interesting. Let's see what that is. Okay, so Said and Monty show up quite a lot. Now this looks to me like this is using the raw count, like not count as in Count of Monte Cristo, but count as in number. But it does look like the Count of Monte Cristo says a lot of things, because Said and Monte and Said and Cristo both show up together pretty frequently. And when we're talking about co-locate, it probably means like within the same chunk of that document. So a rough proxy for the page. Okay, so let's look here in the middle. This is the reader, where you can actually just see the text. It doesn't give you the full text because we're looking at 1.5 million words total here, so it's not going to give you all of them, but it will eventually if you scroll through it. But what this does is it lets you look in here and be like, well, there's an interesting word, lambent. If I click on that, let me see where this shows up. Lambent only shows up in Jane Eyre, it looks like, as we can see over here on the right. Although there's a strange little hump here between Monte Cristo and Dracula, but I think that's just an accident of the algorithm. But it seems to show up in this context in Jane Eyre, which is in this particular phrase or paragraph. So that's the only occurrence of this word in the entire corpus, which is maybe not surprising. It's an unusual word. Let's think of a more common word. Let's look at summer. I bet summer shows up more than once. Yeah, okay. So summer here, we can see summer showing up in different contexts. It shows up in the document that we're in right now, and it also shows up in all these other documents as well. Let's see. I'm trying to remember if I can change the documents here, or if it's only going to show me the one document I'm on. Sometimes the way that the windows interact with each other is a little bit unclear to me. But this little sparkline thing is probably a bit easier to read. This is like if you look along the top middle window, you can see the rate of occurrence of this particular word across each of these works. So this big pink square is Monte Cristo. So that's just the length of this, the width of it rather, is the length of that novel. It's the longest in this group, obviously. So let's see, where's Moby Dick? There's Moby Dick. I think of Moby Dick as a pretty long work, but it's here. It's this yellow bar. So it's still pretty long, but about the same as Little Women, actually. A little bit off of that. But you can see throughout these that the word summer shows up in different scales. The word summer has this little spike in Pride and Prejudice sort of near the middle. So that, I mean, I've read that book a couple times, but I can't remember if it has like a seasonal structure to it, but it probably does, come to think of it. I think the events take about a year throughout the novel, so they probably do spend some time in summer, right? And then Elizabeth, no, she does something. She goes somewhere for the summer, right? Like she visits her friend and stays there for the whole summer. So maybe that's what I think, if I'm remembering correctly. So that's probably why that word has that frequency near the middle of Pride and Prejudice. Anyway, so down here on the left, we can see the more kind of dry number kind of things here, and you can make these windows bigger if you find the right place to hover. So here we can actually see on the left the vocabulary density. So interestingly, and I had no idea that this would be the case, it looks like Treasure Island has the highest vocabulary density. So 0.088. So that's pretty interesting. That's the number of unique words in the document. So that's not necessarily the number of words written, but the number of different words that appear in it, or unique word forms. So that's pretty interesting. I did not expect that. Followed by Dorian Gray, and then Moby Dick, Jane Eyre, and Dracula. So interestingly, so Moby Dick came in third place on that. Monte Cristo, Emma, and Pride, those were all lower. So lower, but Monte Cristo was actually the lowest. That's really interesting. Especially given that Monte Cristo is the longest work here, so it seems like it's the least. It's also the most repetitive work, I guess, in that sense. And these are pretty different. I mean, the numbers here are pretty far off. So 0.08 versus 0.03. That's a pretty big difference. Okay, so this one down here is also pretty interesting. As you can see, said, like, Mr. Man's, no. These are all not very interesting as the most common words. Like, this doesn't tell us much. If the word said shows up a lot, that doesn't tell us much except that there's a lot of dialogue. All of these are novels, so of course there's a lot of dialogue, and so it's a lot of people saying things, and so of course said shows up a lot. So if we ever are in that case where we think said is not interesting, we can actually take that out of our analysis here. So if you click on the define options, it's this little button that looks like an on-off switch. I don't know why they use this button, but you click on that and then you can edit what's called a stop words list or a stop list, and these are words that are going to be not included. And it's already got a whole bunch of these that it's already rejected because they're hardly ever interesting. If you want, you can change this list, but let's go ahead and take said out by adding it to the stop list and see if that changes anything about our view here. Right, so now it doesn't change the way the vocabulary density is calculated, but you can see here that now the most frequent words list, it does not include that. And if we switch this view back to the cloud, said used to be the biggest word here, but it isn't anymore. Okay, so the the other thing that's kind of interesting here, distinctive words compared to the rest of the corpus. These are things that are, given the fact that all of these are in English, there should be a number of words that we would expect to be very common in all of these books, like said. There's also a number of words that we think would be uncommon in all of these works. These are a group of words here on the bottom left that have an unusually high rate of occurrence within each of these works. And what you can see are mostly proper names. So this is one way to get a list of who the main characters are, the main proper names are. Some of these are not proper names, but some of them are, and you can pretty quickly get a sense of which is which. And I bet if you knew anything about these books, if I just gave you this list, like let's say Joe, Meg, Laurie, Beth, Amy, and I didn't tell you what novel that list came from, you could probably guess it was Little Women among this group. Um, Even if you didn't know the name of the, even if you haven't read the book, just compared to these others, you could probably guess that kind of thing. So this is a way that a computer can tell us something about a text without us having to read the text and without us having to get into it. Yeah, so as you can see with the Voyant tools, there's a lot of things that you can discover. But spend a minute or two here playing with it and see if you can discover something about these. I mean, the real trick is developing an argument, and that takes a little while to understand kind of what the computer visualizations can actually do and what they can't do. But then also, thinking about it is really the interesting thing here. But see if you can play around with it, see if you can find something interesting with this corpus, and then let us know in Slack. And yeah, this is Voyant Tools, right? Ultimately, once you like something, once you get a view of this that you think is useful, if you're doing this module, then what you can do next is share it, and let me show you how you might do that. In fact, let me show you inside of a blog post. If I can, no, I don't have my password manager on this computer yet, so I can't log into things yet. But yeah, basically, when you embed these, so click on the export a URL. I recommend getting the PNG. So let's say you like this one, you click export, it's going to give you this URL, which looks like chaos, but you can also just view the image by itself. And this image is a image that you can then save and then upload into your blog. And you should do that instead of linking to it directly. I don't know if you can tell, but this is actually a data URL, so it's actually the data of the image is embedded in the URL. So you probably don't want to use that directly, but you can download the image and then work with it, like any other image. Okay. So I'm going to try one of these that is, I think, a newer visualization they've added. It's called Dreamscape. Not really sure what it does. But yeah, it has something to do with geolocation. So I think it's attempting to identify places that are mentioned in each of these books and then somehow present them, but I don't know. Yeah, okay. So there's like I don't know why it's called Dreamscapes too, but you can see it sort of going here. But that note that just popped out said that this is an experimental visualization. But it is interesting here. I think this would probably be more interesting if I were only looking at a single novel. But you can see the text here at the top seems to be highlighting different places. But Gateshead, it seems to think, is in North America, because it seems to be bouncing back and forth between Gateshead and Fairfax. So there's Mrs. Fairfax, and I think what's happening there is it thinks there's someone named Mrs. Fairfax. There is someone named Mrs. Fairfax, but it's geolocating that to Fairfax, Virginia. It looks like. So that's interesting. Huh. So like this is neat, and you can certainly learn some things from this. But you can see also the limitations of this kind of work too, because a proper name can be a lot of things. It can be a location or it can be a person's name, and a computer. The hardest thing a computer can do is understand context, and we obviously understand context when we read these, and we know that it's Mrs. as opposed to Fairfax, VA, and we could interpret that location just in the context of the sentence even. But the computer has a much harder time doing that without a lot of supervision. And this particular algorithm here doesn't seem to have any supervision. It seems to just be latching on to names that it can recognize from a geo search, and then it's mapping those, bouncing back and forth. Okay. Well, I'll just let that keep running, I guess. Okay, well, it's been about 45 minutes, or maybe 40 minutes. I think that's probably a pretty good introduction to Voyant tools, and also a good introduction, hopefully, to text analysis. There are lots of other things you can do with this. So I don't want to present this as the way to do this module. There's lots of other things you can do. If you are not planning to do this module, of course you don't have to do anything else, but if you are, or if you're considering it, then I would recommend find some other corpus and play around with it in Voyant tools. Again, the main tools that I'm using here are this website here, voyant-tools.org. That's the one that's presenting all this view here. I also used gutenberg.org, which is a place you can download public domain books from, or free books from. Might be useful just to know about anyway. You can often find things in here that are pretty quirky. What is this? Planet Stories. The Girl from Infinite Smallness? What is it? That's pretty random. Okay, so that's I like finding random things here. Hippodrome skating book? Okay, great. You can see they don't just have great literary works, they have anything they can get, basically. But this is all the text analysis module. If you're interested in just trying to understand what sorts of things can be done with this, I like this website, pudding.cool. They show you, as they say, they explain ideas with visual essays. And a lot of times what's going on here is really interesting in terms of its visual presentation. So I would consider a lot of this actually data journalism or digital journalism. But they do things that actually have a literary kind of thing as well. Like this is one of their most popular articles. This is a visualization of vocabulary density among hip hop artists. And so this was a widely circulated link, but you can kind of guess. I mean, if you know hip hop artists, rap artists pretty well, you might mentally kind of come up with a prediction about where they're going to fall on here, and then actually view it and then see where they ended up. So you can, you can see their pictures there, but if you would rather just like pull them up this way, you can do this, I think. Well, I tried to select Bismarcky. Where did he go? Maybe that's not working. He's in here somewhere though, but he's pretty low, I think. Yeah, I don't know. I can't see him. I can't see. These pictures are kind of too small for me to see who's who in here. Well, there's ICP. But the biggest is Aesop Rock and Bus Driver. So yeah, I don't know hip hop very well, so I don't know if those are surprising findings or not, but pretty interesting to look at. This is the kind of thing that you don't have to, I mean, this visualization is obviously very interesting. You don't have to be this interesting with the visualization of it necessarily, but they're doing text analysis here to come up with this. They've taken lyrics and then run it through something very similar to what Voyant Tools does, and then they've used that data to create a graph. You don't have to make the graph necessarily, but this is the kind of thing that text analysis can do. Okay, so that was my introduction to text analysis. You got to see how it works, hopefully, and play around with it, hopefully, in Voyant Tools. If you have any questions, this would be a good time to get them in here if you want to get them on the stream, because I'll be wrapping up in a moment. Yes, you would paste a bunch of lyrics into Voyant, and Maddie, what you can do is, there's two ways you can get something in Voyant. This is probably a good explanation. So let me kind of start over here, and I'll just let that keep running by itself. So in Voyant Tools, whenever you first open voyanttools.org, you can get a corpus in here two ways. You can just actually paste in the full text of something right here. So if you already had it, like open in another tab, I'll just take a look at this Hippodrome skating book. I have no idea what this is, but you can just Control A to select everything, Control C to copy it, or right click copy, and then paste it in here. But that's only if that's everything that you want to do. Like once you've created the corpus, you can't add any more documents to it if you do it this way. So sometimes it is sort of interesting to put a book that you've never heard of into this, just to kind of see what kinds of things you can learn about it. This is a book about skating, I guess, because skating shows up 294 times in it. Backward also shows up a lot, which is kind of funny. So forward and backward. This must be a book about how to skate, like how to do ice skating. I think this is what this book is. Great. Okay. But if you want to do the lyrics, I imagine you'll be. Uh, so if you're interested in like comparing different artists, you might want to make one big file of Taylor Swift lyrics. I mentioned that because I remember a student did this a few years ago with Taylor Swift, and then another big file of I don't know, Evanescence lyrics, and then treat each of those as a document. So it's a document of all Taylor Swift, a document of all Evanescence, and then you upload those as your corpus, like I did with the novels here. Um, but if you're interested in understanding differences among different songs, then you should make a text document for each of those songs and then upload that as your corpus. And then that would give you maybe more interesting ways to dig into it. You would still get a word cloud of the whole corpus, so all of Taylor Swift, but if you had each of several songs or several albums maybe, then as separate text files, then that would be what you would work with. So there's a bit of, there's a pre-step, like there's a corpus preparation step that you would need to do, and how you approach that might be different depending on what kind of document you're looking at. So, and good question, it is not a Word document. So let me see if I can, so Word documents actually might work, but I doubt they do. Let me just check that. What I've been doing here, these are plain text documents, and that's different than a Word document. A Word document has a bunch of formatting and other code that's hidden that you don't see when you type, but that is part of the document. And Voyant tools and other things may not be able to tell the difference between the code that you wrote, or the text that you wrote, and then the code that creates the document. This being a new computer, or new-ish computer, I may not even have any Word documents in here. So let me just see what I have. SpongeBob SquarePants. Okay, I don't remember why I have this. I have on this computer, I have like an entire season of SpongeBob SquarePants videos. I don't remember why I did that. Okay, so I don't have any documents on here. I just have plain text. So let me see if I can switch to a view where you can see see everything. Okay, so this is sort of crazy looking at the moment, but it'll calm down. So when I'm doing this, this is a Linux computer, so I have different software than you probably do, but I have on here a plain text program called gedit or GNOME edit, and it looks like this. This is on Windows, you would be looking at Notepad or Notepad++ maybe, or you might be looking at on a Mac, I think text edit. You can do plain text in text edit, but just to kind of be sure, I recommend using the simplest kind of software. And this is plain text again. This is plain vanilla ASCII text is another way you'll see this referred to. And you can tell that that's what this is because there's no way for me to change the font or to make this bold or to change anything like that. I mean, if I can change the preferences for how I'm viewing this document, but that doesn't change the document itself or change anything about the text. It's just plain text, and this is a regular monospace font. It's something that you would normally use this kind of thing to write code with, but in this case, it's the full text of this novel. So if you're going to something like azlyrics.com, I think is one of those websites, and or maybe genius.com is another one. Let's see. Let me find something. Let's go to Florida Georgia Line. Sure. Okay. So if you wanted to use like Florida Georgia Line lyrics, you would have to select all of these and then copy them and then paste them somewhere, like in this kind of editor here, and then Florida Georgia Florida.text. So that would save it as a plain text document, and then that's what you would upload into Voyant. So that whole process will be a little different depending on your computer. So it may take some practice, but try it out with one and then see if you can understand all the different steps. And then if you have any problems with that one, then let me know and I can try to guide you the right way. All right, great. Well, I will be. I need to wrap it up so I can do this again in a moment, a few minutes, with the next section or whoever joins me. So thanks for watching, everyone. I'll be wrapping it up here. If you have any questions, you get stuck, of course, please reach out. I've got different ways you can contact me. Slack is good for troubleshooting, definitely. So reach out there if you can, or send me an email if you feel like that's better. And yeah, I'm gonna wrap it up. So thanks for watching, everyone, and I hope you have a good day. I'm gonna shut this down.